You're 32, maybe 34, and you're making more money than you ever thought you would at this age. Not rich, exactly, but comfortable. You've got the nice apartment, you order takeout without checking your bank account first, you bought a car that doesn't make weird noises, and honestly, life feels pretty good. You're not stressed about money the way you were in your 20s. You can breathe a little. And yet, somehow, you're not actually getting ahead. Like, you look at your savings account, and it's fine. It's not nothing. But it's also not growing the way you thought it would, now that you're making decent money. You tell yourself you'll start investing more seriously next month, or next quarter, or after you pay off that one credit card, or after the wedding season is over, or after you buy that thing you've been wanting. There's always something, right? And the weirdest part is, you're not even living extravagantly. You're not buying designer clothes or taking luxury vacations every month. You're just living a normal, comfortable life. But here's what nobody tells you about your 30s. And I mean really tells you. Not in some vague, save for retirement way that financial advisors mumble about. My name is Tim, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, behavioral psychology, and why some people seem to build wealth almost accidentally, while others stay financially stuck despite earning really good incomes. And what I've noticed, both in my own life and in watching hundreds of people navigate this decade, is that there's this incredibly subtle trap that catches almost everyone right around the time they start making comfortable money. It's not about being bad with money. It's actually about being just comfortable enough that you stop doing the things that would actually build wealth. And the cruel irony? The trap feels like success. It feels like you've made it. It feels responsible and adult and normal. When you can replace your phone without having a minor financial crisis. When you can afford the good coffee, the slightly nicer hotel, the Uber instead of the subway when it's raining. But here's the thing that's going to sound harsh, but stick with me. The income comfort trap isn't about what you're buying. It's about what you're not building. So let's talk about what's actually happening here, why it's so dangerous, and what you can do about it before you wake up at 40, wondering where the hell the last decade went financially. Here's how it starts. You get a raise. Let's say you were making $60,000, and now you're making $75,000. That's $15,000 more per year, which is like, what, an extra $1,000 a month after taxes? Maybe a bit less. And when you get that raise, you tell yourself, and you mean it, that you're going to save most of it. Maybe you're thinking you'll bump up your retirement contributions, start a real emergency fund, finally open that investment account you've been researching. And you do, kind of. You increase your 401k contribution by 1% or 2%. You feel good about it, responsible, adult. You move to a slightly nicer apartment because you can finally afford a place where the shower has good water pressure and you don't hear your neighbors' entire lives through the walls. That's an extra $300 a month. But come on, you're in your 30s. Don't you deserve a decent living space? You're not being extravagant. You're just upgrading from college tier living. You start getting your groceries delivered because your time feels more valuable now. You upgrade your gym membership to the nice one that's actually close to your apartment. You replace your falling apart work clothes with stuff that fits properly and doesn't look like you're cosplaying as an adult. You say yes to more dinners out because your friends have money now too, and nobody wants to sit around drinking cheap beer anymore. You subscribe to a few services that make life easier. The premium music, the better phone plan, the meal kit for those nights you're too tired to think. None of these decisions are irresponsible individually. That's the trap. Each one makes total sense. Each one is justifiable. You're not buying a boat or a luxury car or taking lavish vacations. You're just living comfortably, living the way someone making $75,000 should live, right? Except, here's the math that nobody wants to face. If you were spending $45,000 to live on $60,000, and now you're spending $60,000 to live on $75,000, you haven't actually improved your financial position at all. You've just upgraded your lifestyle. Your savings rate, the percentage of your income that's actually building your future, hasn't changed. Or worse, it's decreased because your new lifestyle has more expensive maintenance costs. And I know what you're thinking because I thought it too. But Nick, I'm saving more in absolute dollars. I'm putting more into my 401k than I was before. I'm being responsible. And yeah, that's technically true, but it misses the entire point of this decade. Your 30s aren't just about saving a little more. They're about leveraging the massive advantage you have right now. An advantage that gets smaller every single year you don't use it. And that advantage is compound growth over time. The compound growth window you're burning. Okay, let me show you something that genuinely changed how I think about money in your 30s. And I'm going to use simple numbers because the concept is more important than being perfectly precise. Let's say you're 30 years old. If you invest $10,000 right now and it grows at a reasonable 8% annually, by the time you're 65, that single $10,000 investment will be worth about $147,000. You didn't add another dollar. That original investment just sat there growing for 35 years. Now, let's say you wait until you're 40 to invest that same $10,000. By 65, it's worth about $68,000. Still good, but you've lost almost $80,000 in growth by waiting just 10 years. Wait until you're 50? That $10,000 only grows to about $31,000. Do you see what's happening? The same exact $10,000 is worth radically different amounts based purely on when you invested it. And your 30s, this decade you're in right now, this is the highest leverage window you have. Every dollar you invest in your early 30s has the potential to grow into $10 15 inches retirement. Every dollar you invest in your 40s will grow into maybe $5.07. Your 50s, maybe $3.04. This is why the income comfort trap is so devastating. You're not just spending money on a nicer life. You're spending your most valuable financial decade on lifestyle upgrades instead of investing during the exact window when those investments would multiply the most. Then you hit your early 40s and start actually running the retirement calculator numbers, and you realize, oh fuck, I'm way behind where I need to be. And then you spend your 40s trying to catch up, which means either saving way more aggressively and giving up the lifestyle you've now grown accustomed to, or just accepting that you'll probably have to work longer than you wanted to. I'm not trying to be doom and gloom here. I'm just saying that the decisions you make right now, like actual right now, in your 30s, matter more than almost any other financial decade of your life. And the income comfort trap convinces you that you have time to figure it out later. You don't, really. There's another layer to this that makes it even more insidious and has to do with the people around you. In your 20s, everyone was broke together. You all lived in shitty apartments. You all ate cheap food. You all complained about money. There was almost a camaraderie to it. Being broke in your 20s is like expected. It's almost a shared identity. But in your 30s, people start separating into different financial tiers, and it gets weird. Some of your friends bought houses. Some are still renting studios. Some are taking international vacations twice a year. Some are stressed about affording a weekend trip upstate. Some are getting married and having kids and dealing with those massive expenses. Some are still living like they did in their 20s and banking huge percentages of their income. And suddenly you're making all these financial decisions not just based on what you can afford, but based on what feels normal relative to your peer group. If your close friends are all going to that wedding in Mexico, you're probably going too, even if it's going to cost you $2,000 you don't really have. If everyone's doing the brewery tour for someone's birthday, you're not going to be the person who suggests a cheaper alternative. If your work friends all get lunch out every day, you probably do too, because eating a packed lunch alone at your desk while everyone else goes out feels, I don't know, like you're being cheap or antisocial or like you can't afford to keep up. I remember I had this moment a few years ago where a group of friends were planning this big birthday trip. Nice Airbnb, fancy dinners, the whole thing. It was going to cost maybe $1,500 for the weekend. And I was trying to decide if I should go, and I realized I was thinking about it all wrong. I wasn't thinking, is this a good use of $1,500? I was thinking, can I afford this without my bank account looking scary? And those are completely different questions. The first question is about value and priorities. The second question is just about whether you can technically swing it without bouncing a check. And I think most people in their 30s are asking that second question for almost every spending decision. But I am saying that if you're spending money primarily to maintain your position in your social circles, lifestyle expectations, you're letting other people's financial decisions dictate your future. And that's a really expensive way to live. Here's where it gets even more complicated and kind of frustrating, honestly. Once you're making comfortable money, you start getting bombarded with advice about optimizing your finances. Should you get this credit card for the rewards? Should you refinance your student loans? Should you switch to this bank for a slightly higher interest rate on your savings account? Should you use this app to automatically save your spare change? And all of this optimization stuff feels productive. It feels like you're being smart with money. You're researching. You're making informed decisions. You're using the right tools. But optimization is about getting the most out of the money you've already decided to spend or save. It's not about the bigger structural question of how much you should be saving in the first place. Let me give you an example. Let's say you spend an hour researching credit cards and you find one that gives you 2% cash back instead of 1%. If you spend $30,000 a year on that card, you just earned yourself an extra $300 a year. Cool. That hour was worth $300. But if you spend that same hour really thinking about your savings rate, like actually looking at where your money goes and figuring out how to save an extra $500 a month, that's $6,000 a year, and invested over the next 30 years, that's not just $180,000 in raw savings. That's potentially $500,000 plus in compound growth. Same 1 hour. Wildly different impact. And yet, the optimization stuff feels easier and more concrete. It feels like you're taking action without having to make any difficult decisions about your lifestyle. You get to keep spending the same amount, you're just spending it slightly more efficiently. But the real leverage, the thing that will actually change your financial trajectory, is increasing how much you save, not optimizing the small percentage you were already going to save anyway. This is what I mean by the opportunity cost. Every dollar you spend on lifestyle comfort in your 30s is roughly $10, 1.5, you won't have in your 60s. That's not guilt tripping. That's just math. And once you really internalize that, it changes how you think about everything. That $200 dinner isn't just $200. It's potentially $2,000 of future money. That decision to upgrade your car from a reliable used one to a new one isn't just a $15,000 difference. Now, it's potentially $150,000 of future wealth. So what's the actual solution here? Because I've basically just spent 2,000 words telling you that everything you're doing with money is wrong and your comfortable life is ruining your future, which I realize is not exactly helpful without some kind of path forward. In your 20s, most people's financial identity is, I'm broke, but it's fine, because I'm young and I'm figuring it out. You're a student of life, basically. Money is tight, but temporary. Then, in your 30s, there's this default identity that most people slide into, which is, I'm a comfortable professional who works hard and deserves to enjoy the fruits of my labor. And that identity is really compelling. It feels good. It feels earned. And it justifies a lot of spending that might not align with your long-term goals. I'll be honest, this shift took me years to really internalize. For a long time, I was in that comfortable professional mode, feeling like I was doing okay because I wasn't in debt and I was saving a little. And I'd read all the financial advice, and I'd think, yeah, I know I should save more. I'll get to it. But it wasn't until I really changed my identity, until I started seeing myself as someone who builds wealth, rather than someone who manages a comfortable lifestyle, that the actual behavior changed. Okay, But let's get tactical for a minute, because identity shifts are great, but you also need some actual things to do. First, figure out your real savings rate, not what you're putting in your 401k, your total savings rate. Every dollar that's going toward building future wealth, retirement accounts, taxable investments, extra mortgage payments if you own, whatever, add it all up and divide it by your gross income. What percentage is it? If it's less than 20%, you're probably in the income comfort trap. You're saving something, sure, but you're not leveraging this decade the way you could be. And look, maybe 20% feels impossible right now given your expenses. That's fine. Start with 15%. Start with 12%. But know the number and have a plan to increase it. Second, automate everything. The absolute worst thing you can do is try to save whatever's left over at the end of the month. That's not willpower. That's a system design failure. Your savings should come out automatically, before you even see the money, before you have a chance to spend it on something that feels important in the moment. This does two things. One, it forces you to actually enjoy the financial benefit of earning more instead of immediately spending it. Two, it gives you time to decide if you really want to upgrade your lifestyle or if you'd rather just bank the difference. Fourth, and this one's harder, get real about your peer group's influence. You don't need to ditch your friends or become some hermit who never does anything. But you do need to be honest about which expenses are actually enriching your life and which ones are just about keeping up. The wedding in Mexico? Maybe that one's genuinely important. The goal isn't to be cheap. The goal is to be intentional and to make decisions based on your values rather than just going along with whatever everyone else is doing. I want to give you a concrete example of what this looks like when you actually do it, because I think sometimes this stuff sounds too theoretical. Let's say you're 32 and making $80,000 a year. After taxes, that's maybe $60,000 take home. Right now, you're saving about $6,000 a year, 10% of your take home, which feels pretty good. You're not stressed about money. Life is comfortable. But let's say you decide to get serious about this. You look at your spending and you realize you're spending about $54,000 a year on lifestyle. You decide you're going to try to get your savings rate up to 25% of your take home, which is $15,000 a year. That means you need to cut $9,000 from your annual spending, which is $750 a month. That feels impossible at first. Like, where the hell are you going to find $750 a month? You're not living extravagantly. You're just living normally. But then you actually look at the numbers. Maybe your apartment costs $400 more than it needs to because you wanted the nice building. Maybe you're spending $300 a month on restaurants and bars. Maybe there's $150 in subscriptions you barely use. Maybe you're spending $200 a month on convenience purchases, Ubers, delivery fees, grabbing lunch out every day. None of these are crazy on their own, but together, they're well over $1,000 a month. So you make some changes. You don't move to a terrible apartment, but maybe you move to a slightly less nice building and save $200. You cut the restaurant spending in half, still eating out, just less frequently. By the time you're 40, you've invested an extra $72,000. And that's not sitting in a savings account that's invested, growing, compounding. At an 8% average return, by the time you're 60, that extra $72,000 from your 30s has turned into about $350,000. That's the difference between a comfortable retirement and an actually wealthy retirement. That's the difference between working until you're 65 and maybe retiring at 55. That's the difference between having options and feeling trapped. And all of it came from being willing to live slightly less comfortably during a single decade. Here's the thing nobody tells you about actually doing this. Once you get past the initial adjustment period, it's not nearly as painful as you think it's going to be. In fact, there's this weird freedom that comes from opting out of the income comfort trap. You stop feeling like you have to keep up with everyone else's spending. You stop feeling stressed about money even though you're technically living on less, because you know you're building something real. That feeling is worth more than any lifestyle upgrade I can think of. Look, here's the thing. I've spent like 4,000 words basically telling you that the comfortable life you're living right now is a trap that's stealing your future. And I get that that's a harsh message. I really do. But I'm not saying this to make you feel bad or guilty or like you're failing at money. I'm saying it because I genuinely believe that most people in their 30s don't realize they're making a choice. If it's less than 15%, you're probably in the trap. And that's okay. You're not a bad person. You're not failing at life. You're just operating under the same comfortable assumptions that most people operate under. But now you know. Now you can make a different choice. You can decide that this decade, these exact years you're living right now, is too valuable to waste on lifestyle comfort that won't matter in 20 years. You can decide to live a little bit less comfortably now so you can live a lot more freely later. Your 30s are not a dress rehearsal. This is it. This is your highest leverage window. And every single month you spend in the income comfort trap is a month you can't get back, a month of compound growth you're forfeiting, a month that your future self will wish you had taken more seriously. But here's the good news. You're reading this right now. You're thinking about this right now, which means you still have time. Maybe not as much time as you'd like, but enough. Choose less comfort now for more freedom later. Your future self, the one who gets to retire early, or change careers without fear, or just breathe easy knowing money isn't a constant source of stress, that person is going to be so grateful you did. Trust me on this one.